Well, this person was watching our series, our drawing series, Quick Tips of 5, 42, 43, and 44. And she asked, do you have a tip that differentiates drawing for drawing's sake and preliminary drawing for a painting? We don't, but we do now. Well, there's this thing going on now, I know on YouTube, that sort of assumes that when you begin a painting, you just dive right into it, find a photo and copy it. I don't really go along with that system, you might call it. But the idea of the drawing process itself is something that every artist can really find joy in if you simply know it's there and you know how to approach it. Now, if you want to see a master of drawing in our modern day, someone who's still doing it, go to Robert Liberace. Yes, he is a distant relative of Liberace, the musician. But go to his website. He does the most gorgeous drawings you'll ever lay your eyes on. And they are drawings for drawing's sake. And that's what this person asked about. Drawing for drawing's sake or drawing for a painting. So drawing for drawing's sake is what I was doing in these quick tips that she referred to. Both of them require that same beginning process. I say require. I say if you want to get the most out of your painting or drawing and the most joy out of it, really. So it all comes down to, are you really enjoying what you're doing? Because that will come through in your work. Well, the discovery process, that's the one a lot of people either don't know about or just sort of miss out on. Want to go straight to cut to the chase, they say. Discovery process is what I did in the first drawing of the series we just talked about. So the discovery process has to do with, let's look at the image and examine it closely. And the discovery process might vary from artist to artist, but my favorite way to discover is what I showed you. I believe it was 543 in there somewhere, the first one we did. Just as a review, this is the photo I used in that series. And just as a review, what I was doing to discover there is I was exploring, not trying to make a drawing yet, but exploring what's happening within the movement, the way these shapes are moving. And so I was doing something well, let me show you. I was doing something like this. I would start in an area like that, and I explore going forward, back, and forward again on that particular edge. And then I'll take the next edge and I go forward, back, and forward again on that particular edge. I think I did it backwards that time, never mind. I go to the next edge and I do the same thing, forward, back, and forward again. And I continued around the image until I explored what those edges are doing. Now that is part of the gestural movement. The concept of gesture drawing is that you explore the gesture, Gesture, not JES, whatever that is. You explore the gesture, you explore the movement. It is the way shapes are moving within a still image that give the shape its life. And you can capture that life in a drawing, as for a drawing's sake, or in a painting. So what I did, let me review here now. I'll just take this down and show you what the difference is between drawing for drawing's sake and the drawing for painting. So drawing for drawing's sake here is when I do that exploration, but then I take that that one step further and develop a finished drawing from what I explored here. And this, of course, is the drawing I got from that I came to or developed in that series, going through those steps. The next step, but the original steps that I'm talking about of exploring pertain to both if you're going this way or if you're going towards a painting. Now, if you're going towards a painting, you explore this, you find out about it. But to set up for a painting, there is a false idea that you draw every little detail you see. In other words, you get yourself a perfect drawing here, and then you fill it in. But that's not painting, that's filling in. That's more the coloring book approach. But if you use the concept of placement rather than drawing the whole thing and filling it in, but if you use the concept of placement instead, then you come up with then you are ready, I should say, then to move into the painting. Now, so let's take a look at what that looks like. So there are two approaches to how you do placement, depending on, I think, your preference. One is with some sort of a drawing tool, and some people will use vine charcoal. I don't favor vine charcoal because it has to be fixed, or else it's going to mix in with the paint when you start putting the paint on. So I don't favor that, and that's probably my prejudice, so take that with a grain of salt. Some people prefer to use pencil for this placement. Well, the pencil has the same problem, or not quite to the same degree, as vine charcoal. So I don't prefer pencil either. And some people will use some sort of marker, depending on if they're going to do an oil painting, or they're going to do a watercolor painting, or acrylic, or gouache, or whatever medium they're going to use. If it's for an oil painting, then the water-based markers are good. If it is watercolor painting, then yes, pencil is your best bet for placing the image. But notice I keep emphasizing that term placement. If you take the attitude that you're placing it within the space that you're drawing in, and then within that space you will develop the painting based on your observation and based on the preliminary drawings that you've already done where you did all that exploration. So my preferred way of placement for my own work, and many times when I'm doing a class or when I'm doing a demonstration, my preferred way of placement is what I'm going to show you right now. And that is to begin with a very small bristle brush. This is a bristle filbert, and I don't know what the number of it is. I think it's probably number 2 or something. Some numbers worn off. It is a number 2, but very small, so that you can work with the point. And I'll show you how I do that now. I always like to start out with some sort of transparent color, not opaque, because the opaque colors tend to want to mud what you do later. So for the placement step, I'll dip my brush in a little bit of solvent. And it's okay to use solvent against the canvas itself, as long as you don't use it in the paint as you're developing the painting. And I like to use something like ultramarine blue, so I'll just pull out a little bit of ultramarine blue on the palette here. And the reason I like ultramarine blue for the placement step is that it's a non-staining color. And so it allows me then to make adjustments if I need to. So here's how I would do the drawing. This is the preliminary drawing, and placement are the same thing. Preliminary drawing is the drawing that you do on the canvas. A lot of people will call the preliminary drawing what I do earlier, which I call discovery. But when you're actually placing it on the canvas, the drawing on the canvas, for me, that's the preliminary drawing. So the preliminary drawing then, rather than going ahead and developing like this in a drawing, I begin with that concept of placement on the drawing surface. So this is oil, and so if you're working in oil or if you're working in acrylic, you can use open acrylic with maybe water or a slow drying medium. And what I will do here is just get this liquefied. Let's get just a little bit more of that out there. Get a little bit of that on there because I don't want this to be very dark. And then I'm going to just use the tip. Now what I'm going to do here is to take the same attitude towards the image as I took when I was doing the studying part. So I can just begin. Now some people will actually just place a general shape first like this. Place that general shape first and then begin to work it out from there. That doesn't do anything for me. It's okay for people who prefer that way. But for first of all, what I like to do is to look at this space. How big is that space? And how big do I want that image in that space? And if I'm working with a single image, such as I am here, or if I'm working with a portrait or animal or something, then I'm just going to be dealing with placing it in that empty space. If I'm working with another kind of image where I'm working with a landscape or something, then I want to, not have to, consider how all those shapes will fit into that space. So if I'm working with this one, for example, I might consider, okay, it's moving in this direction, it's sitting, placing, it's placed, or it's sitting, or it's moving in that direction. And so I might even make myself a little mark like that. This is just to get started. And then I want to decide how much negative space I want around that. So if I want it to fit relatively tight into that negative space, such as I have in my drawing there, then I'll begin to develop that. Now sometimes it's not a bad idea to do some just general placement in relation to the direction that you set it in. And so for this one, for example, if you'll notice where it comes out of where it comes out of the limb here, it's not halfway. You see, and so I probably already discovered that when I did this, or when I did this, I discovered that relationship. But I might go ahead and make that little notation in this preliminary drawing. And from that point, I'll begin to not draw it, but suggest where its edges are going to be. And I like to do those in this particular stage. I like to do in angles rather than curves. So I might come around and say this angle right here, well, that's in that direction. And I might come down here for this direction right here. Then I might just do another angle that pulls back in here like that. And then another angle that moves in this direction like that. And I might indicate, now then I'll ask myself the question, do I want the limb in there? I probably have already made that decision. And so I do want there to be some relationship of the mushroom to whatever it's coming from, where it's coming from. So I would then say, okay, the limb. Now I don't want that limb coming down, or I don't want that limb, the edge of it intersecting with the corner there. That's a tangent. We try to avoid those tangents because it creates strong attention if a line or a shape goes off through that corner. So I want to be sure that drops down. It is dropped down there. And I took it over a little bit further. I could make that decision later. So remember, we're not making final decisions in the placement. In the preliminary drawing, we're not making final decisions, but what we're doing is we're placing it to make those decisions within. And we realize that whatever we do here, we might want to change our minds later. So a good painting is always flexible until it gets to that stage where you begin to refine it and pull it together. When I say always flexible, I mean always changeable. That you might want to change at any point when you see how things are happening. So I would connect that like that perhaps. Then I see how that goes out like this. And then I see this one. I'll just do this at, let me make that a little bit. I need to reload the brush there. I must insist that it's important you keep this line thin, the paint thins. Don't want the paint thick at this stage because then it'll mix with your further strokes of paint and throw you off base with your color. All right, now, so that edge is at this angle. So I'm more interested in the angles and the directions of the movement of those edges right now than I am in creating an exact shape. Because that's going to determine the movement of the whole image. So I might do something like that. Now, I could decide here, do I want there to be some negative space up here, or do I want to take it off the edge? And I don't think take it off the edge here. I think that would probably make it feel a little cut off. And so we'll just say I would stop that. So I'm bringing this is this here. So I brought that about right there. Tilt that up and then bring that down to suggest that little indentation there. And then over, and I'll just create a place for it. That's what placement means, is that you create on your canvas a place, or on your paper, whatever your painting surface is, you create a place for your images to live. And then within that placement, you begin to develop the painting. Now, I usually, on the preliminary drawing, I might not do any more than this, because for me, my next step is to find the shadows and the lights. So usually I'll just put only as much information as I need here in order to place the image, and no more, because that's going to be done in the painting step. So just because I might have created a drawing of it once or twice even, where I was able to make it look like the thing, which most people use as their gauge for success. If it is a likeness, well, that's not always my gauge, but we'll go there another time. Nevertheless, the idea is not to do this in such detail that you are tight in trying to fill those details in, but to create a space for it to live, then approach it broadly. As I said before, my next step would be to find the light and shadow relationship, which I won't do here, but I'll show you how I go about that. You can see here there's shadow, and there's shadow here. The light's coming from there. It's very important to show where the light's coming from. You see I've done that in the drawing there. So in the shadow areas, that's where my no tan comes in. I would take one value, and it's usually ultramarine blue. I just find that it's a wonderful color to work with. It's transparent and non-staining. And I do want to also go, before I close this out, suppose when I do my placement, I'm not happy with the way I placed it. I'm thinking, like a little difference in some area or another. Well, in that case, I could simply wet some paper towel with some clean mineral spirits. Let's say I'm seeing here, I think I'd like that to have a little bit more definite, a little bit more change in angle. So I would take that away. You see how easy ultramarine blue lifts from the surface. I would just use a lint-free paper towel, which I use in my studio, and clean mineral spirits, and then just not very wet. It doesn't have to be very wet, just slightly damp. And then I could go back and re-examine how I might want that to go. Let me reload the brush here, and I might say, well, I really prefer to indicate that I want a little bit more of a shape in here, and then I want this tilt to emphasize this tilt and this movement a little bit more like that. So you see, this is the preliminary drawing for painting. This is a preliminary drawing for drawing. Or actually, the actual preliminary drawing for the drawing is underneath here. But if you watch the video, you know that underneath here lives something like this. So that's the difference. Give that a try and see if you don't enjoy that process. Be sure to view all of our quick tips. And while you're doing so, subscribe to the channel, click on the bell so you'll always get a notice when we produce a new quick tip, which is every week. And if you have a question, leave it in the comments section and we'll make a quick tip for you. Also, take a trip over to DianneMize.com where I have full-length lessons, downloads, DVDs, lots of other stuff there, some free stuff for you. And while you're there, you can subscribe to the newsletter, and that way you'll always be informed every time we do something new.